Okay, students, so we can start the session for today. Students, I hope the screen is visible for you all at the moment. You can see the screen. So, if you observe in the screen, students, you are able to see the following. The question number 2, the mock number 2. So, as I told you in the initial stages, I will be guiding you on how to write the answers and how to be more strategic in the examination. Now, students, if you observe this, you see the first step in examination is point of focus. So I'll write down here, students, point of focus. If point of focus is gone, that means you are not able to pass the examination. Just keep that in mind, students, point of focus, which is very, very important, Now, evaluate how the investment in lithium may affect the stakeholders of Rotomyne. So I'll write down here, students, investment proposal, impact to, impact to, impact to the stakeholders of Rotomyne. Investment proposal, impact to the stakeholders of Rotomyne. I hope that is very transparent and very clear for you at the moment. And the second one is, students, how $2000 million can be raised to fund the project. So I'll write down here 2000 million, or I can say P dollar 2000 million, P dollar 2000 million investment fund to be financed. How are you going to finance this investment fund? Now, students, this is a sure question in the exam. That is investment decision. This question comes every paper. So I always suggest students, the Asian students who are used to mechanical way of writing, they don't score proper marks because in OCS and the MCS, the answers are more mechanical. Mechanical means if you practice, you will be able to figure it out by your own. But when it comes to the strategic case study examination, it's not about the practice. It's all about how you are able to think and how you are able to apply your point of view and thinking also. Now, students, let's focus on this so that it will be very, very clear. Now, you observe in this case, Andre has sent you the following mail. We have learned a lot from the previous experience we had with protesters and considering the request from them. We have understood that lithium extraction is taking more water and carbon emission as well. Now, students, if you observe that we already is aware, correct? No, students, can you remember the hard rock mining and the traditional brine mining? If you observe, we are effectively having more water, that is the fresh water is used, the drinking fresh water is used, which can be used for agricultural purposes because there can be a conflict of interest with farmers. So can I write down one more thing? Exam focus, conflict of interest with farmers. Exam focus, conflict of interest with farmers. Conflict of interest with farmers. This can become a political risk also. Can I write it down, students? Political risk as well. The reason why I am suggesting this can be a political risk is farmers are a voter-based community. That means they have a high level of vote. So in case if the farmers are protesting against the lithium mine because it is taking a lot of water, which is needed for their agriculture. For instance, students, do you see this one? In this image, do you see underground reservoirs? So this underground reservoirs, only usage is not lithium. This underground reservoir has other usage also. And the fundamental usage can be agriculture. Students, can I quickly get a Y in the chat box if you are okay with the thinking? Can I quickly get Preetham, everyone? Can I get a Y in the chat box, students? Because whenever you are going to the examination in MCS and OCS, you are only concentrating on the textbook. But when it comes to the SCS, it's very nice paper because you are like going through a news channel. And when you're going through the news channel, textbook knowledge will not come. Current issues only may come in the news channel. So how are you going to eliminate the current challenges? Using your common sense is something that you have to consider when going to the examination. Okay, now students, let's go through this more and more in detail so that you will understand the perspective very, very well. So students, if you observe in this case, you are seeing carbon dioxide, fresh water, and use of land, you are effectively seeing in these cases. And the most, I can say, the most or the least environmental impact one is the direct lithium extraction. But the problem, it depends on the power source. Students, can I quickly put a highlight there? Because emission is depending on the power source. We don't know whether we are using coal for power, solar for power, again, hydro electricity. We are not aware about it. So students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box, students, if you are getting the clarity of these three aspects? Because we have to say this is something inherent risk. So can I write down here, students, this is an inherent risk because smoking causes cancer. That is inherent risk. So you can't avoid it. Now, students, smoking causes what, students? Cancer. I think we are aware about it. And it is impossible to eradicate cancer and smoking because both of them have positive relationship at the moment. So students, can I quickly get again a Y in the chat box, students, if you are getting the clarity, students, because you see the answers are more focused on the thinking element rather than the textbook element here. Now, students, once again, moving forward, let's assume this. Therefore, we are evaluating the business proposal after 2004 to invest on direct lithium extraction as a sustainable course of action. So, students, I will highlight this 2004 data. The reason for this is, students, now, if you observe the application, so I'll write down here 2004, and today we are in 2024 for your understanding. The ideation between this is 20 years. So there is something called the dividend policy. Students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box if you quickly point this dividend policy? Now, students, for 20 years, there were no investments. So the dividend policy can be a fixed dividend or fixed rate of dividend because, students, the company didn't expand. The company just went through a process. Now, students, if you observe the application in the dividend policy, suppose after 20 years, if you are going for an investment, I think there will be an impact to the dividend policy, impact to the dividend policy. So students, I will just write it down in this section. It can be for the part B. Students, can I quickly get a Y in the chat box, students? Now you see the methodology I was thinking in this case. I was pointing out the dividend policy by just focusing on the information given in the year. Now you see the paper is very, very thinking oriented. Because if you observe in the case of a student doing exam, he has to think more than recall the stuffs that was done in the class. Students, can I quickly get a double Y in the chat box, students, if you are able to understand that perspective? Thank you very much, students. Now, if you see, do farmers have influence? Is it important? Yes, common sense. Water and farmers has a direct relationship because, as we were explaining, it's a commercial factor to be considered in the point of environment aspect. But in the case study, they did not mention anything with relating to the farmers. But as an industrial person, you have to have that commercial thinking that water is an essential resource, considering the fresh water. So in that case, it may definitely affect the farming of a particular region in case lithium extractions are taking place. So this is how your mind should think. Because if you observe, if you had worked in the strategic level, it is more about thinking and making sure you evade any future adverse effect rather than just focusing on one perspective. Now, students, let's move on to the question more in detail. So they are telling evaluate. So we went through this, and $P 2000 million can be raised. Now, when this comes, as a student, as you always go to the examination, when they give you $P 2000 million fund needed, you have to always remember one golden rule, the current gearing ratio. Because, students, the current gearing ratio is always considered in the examination. The current gearing ratio is always considered in the examination. Yeah, I'm explaining that, right? Here you can see farmers voter based conflict of interest. Conflict means in English, there is a issue that is only known as conflict. So I hope you understood the English term conflict. Conflict means there is a clash. Clash means a problem. Problem means a fight or something like that. So that is the ideation I was explaining with the exam point of view. That is, in this case, it's not much relevant. But when you're going to the examination, you have to have a understanding of the things that can surround our business specifically. Students, I hope this 2000 million fund needed is very clear, because when you go to the examination, certain students write down the answers of the management case study. In the management case study, you write what is debt, what are the impact of the debt. Okay, debt is cheaper than equity. Those things are management case study. In strategic case study, you have to be very concerned whether are we able to get a debt finance considering our current status. So I'll just mention current status. Can we raise the fund? Can we raise the fund? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves. Students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box, students, if you understood that perspective very, very clearly, students? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Now, students, let's go through the question more in detail. So, as you are aware, the business proposal of direct lithium extraction can be a better solution to avoid environmental catastrophe. That is true, no, students. Therefore, in that case, the management has decided to investing on direct lithium extractions rather than traditional method. However, the direct lithium extraction will cost $2000 million. Therefore, we have to be very much concerned whether the stakeholders, understand the term here, students, stakeholders. Now, I mentioned farmers. Now, farmers is something that the student needs to be creative in the exam to think will benefit the proposal. So, students, you have to think in that perspective. Now, students, in the examination, whenever they are giving a stakeholder-oriented question, the first thing you have to understand is one person, that is the shareholders. So, students, can I write down here shareholders? So, one stakeholder who will get affected in this case. Now, students, you have to understand the reality of business. Shareholders control every company. And I can say the major shareholders like Warren Buffett, BlackRock. Okay, so these companies, Vanguard, and then student state steel. So these companies generally control the organizations in the form of having a CEO who is acting on behalf of their decision. Now, students, my question in this case, if you observe in more strategic perspective, the fundamental objective of every shareholder is shareholders' wealth. And if you had invested in stock market also, students, you will be also observing one thing. Although there are so many environmental agendas like ESG, integrated reporting, global reporting initiative, CSR, at the end of the day, what matters is the stock prices are going up, and are they effectively getting sufficient dividends as well? So in that case, students, we have to be very much diplomatic when we are writing the answers. So shall we go forward with writing the point of view? So I'll write down here the shareholders generally expects their wealth to increase, and also to have stable income, Since 2004, there has been no investments on lithium mine, which indicates this company has been stable, and the dividends are well managed. And the dividends are what, students? Well managed and paid as well. Therefore, in this case, the question arises in the short term. can be the return on investment for P dollar 2000 million. And technically considering the industry nature, it may take time. And also, the source of power plays a critical role. Therefore, the principal agency problem may arise whether the share price increase or sustainable practices. So the management may have a challenge to convince the shareholders with regards to the business function of long-term sustainability. Of long-term what, students? Sustainability. Students, can I quickly get the perspective? Now, we say companies are effectively making losses because of the CEOs or the management. The reality is not the CEOs or the management, the shareholders. Now, students, if you observe one thing, Apple company, they are not having much innovation at the moment because the shareholders may be reluctant to invest more funds. In that case, you have to go with what you have and you have to manage it what you can do with. So this is the biggest challenge on the shareholders. So students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box, students? If you understood this perspective, thank you. Thank you very much. What is power source? I think I was explaining the power source as clear. Hydroelectricity, coal power, and there is something called the diesel power, and then we have something like the solar energy. So these are the power sources. I hope power means the electricity, how it is generated. Now, example, if you have a mobile phone, the power is generated through electricity. You have to charge it. So how you have to charge it is you have to use electricity, and how electricity is generated depends on different places. I hope that is clear for you at the moment. Thank you. Now, students, let's move forward in detail so that you will understand how the things are going to work out. Now, the next thing is, students, just understand after shareholders, the other problem arises is the employees. Now, students, if you observe the employees, also one challenge is there. Now, if you observe our business, currently is very good in hard rock mining and traditional brine mining. Now, the biggest challenge we have is, do we have the employees to work on direct lithium extractions? Because that is the biggest challenge for us. Because if you observe, we have to train them, we have to make sure they understand how the things work around. So is that be a challenge for us? Of course, this can be a huge challenge for us. Students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box with regards to the employees? Thank you very much, students. And one thing, just to add the quality of the answer, what I will do is, I will just write it this one also, students. Now, if you see, the geologists are in demand. So I can use these people also. Feroza, it is getting recorded. So I hope you can go through the recording and go through what is missed because it is affecting the flow of the classes. I hope it is clear for you. Thank you. Now, students, if you observe, the geologists are in demand. Now, students, these people can be considered as a recruitment. Can I quickly get a why in the chat box, students, if you getting that perspective? These people can be considered as an employee in the case study exam. That means your answer quality will go very high. Thank you. Thank you very much, Pritham and Utami. So students, let's just go forward and start thinking on the aspirations, but just understand it clearly. These are the type of questions they may ask. The employees of Rotomyne does not have much specialization of, I can effectively say much specialization of direct lithium extraction. Direct lithium extractions. Direct lithium extractions. In that case, in that case, in that case, we have to understand that the business needs to consider the training and skill development for the employees. Also, we need to recruit geologists as well in order to make sure there is a credibility of lithium in sites. Therefore, this can also add cost to the business, which may reduce the shareholders' wealth. Reduce the shareholders' wealth. Students again understand it here also. This is how the business decision is effectively affected. Shareholders' wealth. Shareholders' wealth. Now you see every decision you are making is affecting the shareholders' wealth. Can I quickly get a why in the chat box, students, if you understood that perspective of shareholders' wealth? I'll just give you an ideation so that you understand it clearly, students. If you see Europe versus America, you tell me in the chat box, students, which country performed well for the last 30 years? Who invented Microsoft? America. Who invented Zoom? America. Who invented ChatGPT? America. Who invented social media? America. Everyone knows that. The reason why America is taking over United States of Europe is only one thing, students, investors' attitude. American investors are high risk takers. They are not worried about losing money. But Europeans are highly risk averse because if you observe, European companies are only surviving due to their legacy brands like Swiss watches, German cars. But if you observe, American brands are not like legacy brand. They are completely innovative, like Tesla, GMC. All these things came up because of their innovative mindset and how they grow. Students, can I quickly get a double Y in the chat box, students, if you got the clarity behind this European American culture? Thank you very much, students. Thank you very much, everyone. Now, students, let's go forward in more detail. The $200 million is finance. So I'll just go in detail. Therefore, this can be a major factor to be considered. Major factor to be considered as well. Now, the next thing, students, can I write down one more stakeholder? Government. Students, is the government an important stakeholder in this particular business industry? I can say yes. Can I quickly get a double Y in the chat box, students? Because considering this industry, government is always a very, very keep satisfied type of a investor or the shareholder. So I can say a stakeholder. So in the government point of view, can we do a quick analysis, students? Yeah. The government may be concerned about the power source, And government policies are different from developing countries. Government policies are different from developed country to what, students? Developed country to what, students? To developing countries. Developed country to developing countries. Therefore, the source of power can be fossil fuel, I can effectively say solar, hydro. All depends on how the local infrastructure is. Students, if you are in a developing country, you may be knowing that the local infrastructure development is very backwards and very poor also. So students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box, students? Therefore, the source of power can be fossil fuel, solar, hydro, all depends on the local infrastructure as well. So students, let's move forward more in detail so that you will be able to understand the perspective very well, very clearly, and also I can effectively say it can give you a better clarity also. Now, I can also say this can also lead to risk, such as governments planning for asset freezing, where government take over private properties. Government take over private property. Students, this has happened in mostly communist countries, students, where Russia, everything, they take the private properties also in that perspective. So students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box, students, if you got that clarity behind that? Thank you. Thank you very much, students. Thank you very much. Now, students, after these shareholders, employees, and government, the next thing that we can be concerned about is the farmers, students, and then I will come to the environmentalist. But can I write down farmers also in this case, students? Because I can say water is generally an important source for agriculture. For agriculture, students, understand again. I'm repeating consistently. Uh, Fresh water, students. Look at this here, students. Fresh water. Now you have to understand one thing. Fresh water means it can have alternative uses. Alternative uses specifically focusing on agriculture. So understand that perspective of fresh water, specifically targeting the agricultural point of view. I hope that is clear for you at the moment. So for important for agriculture, which can be sustained and conserved. Conservation means you are saving. Conservation, save for the future use, for the future use. In that case, this proposal may be always a good for the ecosystem, for the ecosystem, considering the other two options, considering the other two options, considering the other two options, considering the other two options. I hope this is clear. Therefore, the farmers, therefore the farmers may effectively have a better mutual relationship with lithium extractors, mutual relationship with lithium extractors, with lithium extractors, with lithium extractors. Okay, students, now I will come to the next one, environmentalist. Environmentalist. The environmentalist may also consider this as a good initiative, and they too may support this as well, since they will eventually be satisfied with the environmental preservation. Therefore, in that case, this can be a major sustainable development. Students, the next one I'll write down is a very bigger challenge for us, competitors. Now, students, within brackets, I will mention here as game theory. Now, you have to understand the game theory properly. Now, if Coca-Cola comes with a great initiative, Pepsi also should do that. Or else Coca-Cola will become a monopoly. Are you getting that point? So if you observe in this world, according to this case study, how many competitors are there? 4 are there. And of that 4, we are one. Now, the biggest challenge is if the 3 lobby against our company. If the 3 forms a union and they lobby against our company's direct lithium extraction proposal because it will be a huge threat for them, there are chances that our business proposal can be legally cancelled. Our business proposal can be legally cancelled. Are you understanding that perspective there, students? So I'll write down here, since in the market, there are only 4 lithium extractors, there can be resistance. There can be resistance. There can be resistance from other 3 players, and they can lobby the government. They can lobby the government. They can lobby the government, which will eventually result in a situation where the company will effectively not receive the permits, for direct lithium extraction, for direct lithium extraction. So students, now do you feel one thing? The answers which I have constructed in this case is more in line to the pre-seen material rather than the textbook knowledge. Once again, I am repeating, students, the answers what I have developed in this case is more relevant to the pre-seen material rather than the case study or the textbook, students. So understand it very, very well. It should be like a continuation in the exam day. Students, part A part is over, but do you see the advanced level of the answer? The answer advanced level has come to the higher perspective. Students, can we go to the next part, if you don't mind, students? That is the $2,000 million investment. Now, students, I'll just write down here, every business will focus on raising finance at the cheapest source. In this case, debt will be cheaper. But the challenge is, can we raise debt since we have a 50% plus gearing ratio? 50% plus what, students? Gearing ratio. Are you understanding that perspective of 50% plus gearing ratio? Students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box, students, if you got that perspective of 50% plus gearing ratio? Thank you, students. Now, students, the next section I have to say, therefore, the challenge can be, considering the fall in revenue in the industry, can we manage to get a loan? It will be a challenge. Also, in case we provide collaterals like the mines we own, still this can be a major challenge. Since we can get loan, but the interest rate will be higher. But the interest rate will be higher. Students, just for your indication, I don't need to do this in the examination, but I'll just do one calculation. Now you see here it's 5,000 and the interest we pay is 500. So for 5,000, it is 500 means, can I just say the interest rate is 10% students? Are you understanding what I'm saying? Interest rate is how many percent students? At 10%, I think significantly it's a higher interest rate. Students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box? Students, are you understanding that 10% is the interest rate? So it is anyway higher. So considering the current issue, the 10% is higher, but still it can be more higher as well. Therefore, from 10%, the interest can go up. The interest can go up. The interest can go up. So this is the biggest challenge we will face in the business aspect. Students, any questions you like to ask, you can ask me. But can I quickly get a why in the chat box, students, if you understand? Also, the beta factor. Students, please remember in the exam day, don't forget the beta factor by any chance, because beta factor determines the industry risk, 1.63. The beta factor of 1.63 is also something to be considered. Is also something to be considered as well. Something to be considered as well. Students, are you clear? So in that point of view, the loan will be challenging. But one advantage we can get tax benefits for high interest. And the other one, students, also we can concentrate on subsidized loan, since this will reduce the environmental impact as well. But very doubtful, very much doubtful. Students, are you clear with the perspective? Can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box, students? Because don't worry, just make sure you get the clarity how you have to position your answers, students. Asset pledge, no, I think that is the mentioning, right? Students, asset pledge is only I have mentioned very clearly in this case. Collaterals like mind we own, presence of mind is important. So that is the meaning there. I hope that is fine, students. Can we go forward more with the other point of view? So can I write down here? Therefore, the other option can be raise finance from equity. One can be free cash flow. One can be what, students? Free cash flow. Free cash flow, students, cash flow after paying dividends. Cash flow after paying what, students? After paying what, students? Dividends. Students, can we quickly check our free cash flow? Just for your information, can we quickly check our free cash flow? Our free cash flow is 857, correct, no, students? Even if you have paid a dividend of 1,684, we only have 857. I don't think this is sufficient. Can I quickly get a Y in the chat box, students? 857 is not sufficient. The reason is, students, our trade payable balance itself is 1,700. That means accrued salaries of the employees. So in that case, we have to make sure we manage the funds properly. So I'll write down here, this source is insufficient. This source is insufficient. This source is insufficient at the moment. 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 Retained earnings is not money, it's theory. We can't use profit for funds. Cash is only needed for fund, because retained earnings includes credit sales, non-cash elements like depreciation, amortization, and other factors like borrowings which are not yet realized. All those things are retained earnings, because retained earnings, a simple English term is accumulated profit. I'll give you a quick example. 1,882, this amount has been retained. I think this is the profit for the year. This has been included, but this profit for the year includes all non-cash elements, all non-cash elements. So in the exam, please never write retained earnings. You will not pass the exam, I can say. You will not pass the exam because students, you are in strategic level, and in strategic level, if you mention we can use retained earnings to fund the proposal, that clearly says that you are not competent enough to become a management consultant. So I hope you got that clear. Can I quickly get a double Y in the chat box, students? If you understood that perspective there, yeah, thank you very much, students. Thank you. Thank you. For a new company, to form a new company, I think that's out of the point of focus, because I told you in the exam, your point of focus should be here. Using a new company for lithium, common sense must be there. Lithium companies are not easy to form. Only 4 companies are there in the world, and we are one of them. Like you have audit firms, big 4. You can't have another company just for the loan. There needs to be some judgment in your point of view. Okay, students, can I go forward? Therefore, the rights issue needs to be considered. But the challenge is how many investors will be ready to finance. Suppose if they finance, the gearing ratio reduces. The gearing ratio may reduce since equity increases. This can reduce the technical cost of debt. Technical what, students? Cost of debt. And also technical cost of equity, book cost of equity. Technical cost of what, students? Equity. Within brackets, I'll mention books. Therefore, in that case, the ideal option can be rights issue. Since it is a investment in property. Within brackets, can I write down mines? So property appreciations may effectively increase the shareholders' wealth. I'll give you the real estate example, students. Now you invest in real estate today. I think that will effectively raise your value in the future. Students, can I quickly get a confirmation from you all in the chat box if you got the perspective here, students? Because now your point of view should always go with the mining industry. You should not think like a general accountant. You should think like an accountant or a management consultant specifically working in this perspective. Students, don't worry. After the mock 3, I will give you assessments. You must do it. But at the moment, understand one thing, students. You can pass the examination only using common sense. Can I get a double Y in the chat box? Because let's assume if you are not a bookish person, a person who don't read, write, or memorize, in that case, it will not help you at the end of the day. Thank you. Thank you very much, students. Now, students, let's come to the one-to-one discussion. Feroza, any questions you like to ask? If there is no questions, you can put Y in the chat box. Gamu, any questions you like to ask? If there is no questions, you can put Y in the chat box. Pritham, any questions? Rahul, any questions? Unnati, any questions? Please do let me know. So thank you very much, students, for all your efforts and your dedication. So what we can do is we will meet up on the Sunday class with the mock number 3. Thank you very much, students. Good night, everyone.